Welcome, everyone, back to Tony the Mayor podcast. We have an awesome show for you today in our continuation of Church Hurt. This is part one of a two-part series. It's truly going to be a blessing to hear. So today we have two wonderful guests that are going to enlighten us about their church experience by giving us a comprehensive look at religion, church doctrine, and being raised within the church from childhood to adulthood. So sit back and listen with an open mind, because one thing we will learn is that if being hurt by the church causes you to lose faith in God or allow it to waver, then your faith was in people and not God. So please feel free to like, subscribe, and comment down below.
Before you begin to listen, please understand that this is not an attack on anyone's character or religious beliefs, denomination, or church, but this is to open the eyes of them that have been misled by toxic leaders, uninformed leaders, or leaders that perform with cult-like practices. Please understand and please listen well as you continue to experience strength and hope through others' story. These stories are here to help you, not to hurt you, and to open the eyes of the blind. Thank you.
We left the church. We visited a church in Manhattan, and we just sat there and we cried. I mean, we felt like we had let God down. We knew God told us to leave, but we knew this wasn't the place. You know, we knew it, and we were upset and just hurt. Even my grandson and my other grandbaby, she was so little she can't remember, but we felt like, wow, this can't be it. It's got to be something. God told us to leave. It's got to be something more out there. And it was hard for me really to visit any other church in Junction City because I felt like everybody knew me, and I wasn't ready to people that asked me why you wasn't there anymore. Why you not at? And we end up over at Pastor Johnson's church. And my thing is that when I went to Pastor Johnson's church, I've been knowing Pastor Johnson and Alice forever.
He's so sweet.
They're so nice. And that's all, that is all this. They have so much love. But I just tried to sit back and hide a few times. And Pastor Johnson, he saw me one Wednesday night. Talking about, I keep seeing you come in here. I can't just let you go. I don't want to know what's going on with you and why you're here, anything like that. I just want to make sure, you do what you're supposed to do. And, if you want to work in the ministry, and my thing was, I told my wife I wasn't even joining another church when I left. I said, I'm not joining the church. I'll just visit, or if I go to church, I don't even want to deal with any other pastors. And so when we one Sunday, Pastor Johnson, they were out of town, and my wife said, we're going to join this week. I said, I'm not ready to join. So they didn't do the membership thing at the end of church, and I was like, wow, I got out of this. They forgot to ask if anyone wanted to join. But her, if you know my wife, she went up there and said, hey, look, we want to join the church. The next thing I know, somebody was coming all the way in the back to get me so we could come join the church, and I've been there ever since. But, I listened to her. So when we left there, and I know God told me to leave and don't go back. God told us to leave and not to come back. She was out of town, and I went back, and it was just like, being in hell. I mean, it was so much coming towards me. So many people hate
to go back for what? Confirmation or validation?
I felt like I need to go back because I was not for confirmation or anything like that, but because I felt like that maybe I was hurting the pastor by leaving. Wow. Maybe I ought to go back and
attachment.
Yeah, it was emotional. Mm-hmm. It was a big emotional attachment. Yeah. Maybe I ought to go back there and let her know I still love them. And my wife said, we said we weren't going to go back, and the people treated me so mean.
Yeah. But you know what? It shouldn't have to be a personal, oh my gosh, we can't talk. Your personal relationship with those people should not be predicated on your membership.
Right.
And that's where I don't understand why people treat you different, like we're in gangs, like we can't talk to you.
Uh-huh.
Like, hey.
All right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's
so
crazy.
Like,
they treat you like they don't even know you.
Right.
And you've known them their entire life, but because of a personal choice you made, not saying, like, you went to a different church. Mm-hmm. Okay. You're still going to church. You still love the Lord. You're still Brother Tim's.
Yeah.
What is the problem? I don't understand that.
And my kids, the first thing that they did when they got old enough was say, hey, I'm not being a part of that. I'm not, and we used to make them come to church. I'm glad that they have a decision to come. I had I have a granddaughter that lived with me for quite a while, and my wife, she's strict on that. Like we get up in the morning, we going to church. If I go, you go. And I was different. I wanted her to be able to learn who God was and make the decision on her own to come to church because she wanted to.
Right.
And that's what I wish I would have did with, my daughters, even though I think my influence by the life I live would have, caused them to want to go there anyway. But I put so much of other people before them. And that's one of the questions too, Tiffany, too. But let's start with this. Each one of you just tell me a little bit about yourself. You want to go first, Tiffany?
I will let Tiffany go ahead.
Okay. Well, generally, hold on a second. Generally speaking, I'm a newlywed, and
all right, congratulations.
I am a former ordained minister. That is in my history. But I'll talk about that later. I'm not, doing those things right now. I want to do what God told me to do. I'm a realtor, and I'm also a virtual entrepreneur. So I do work from home. I assist clients with repairing their credit, and I do life insurance like Casaundra, to help people, especially in the Black community, to create generational wealth and to build a legacy as well. So that's what I'm about doing. I'm also into doing mission work overseas in Africa, Senegal, Africa. So I'm just trying to get those things set up. And that's who I am. I'm going to become a mother soon. So
that's great.
I'm so happy for her.
That's great.
Yeah, so I have some questions later in the interview.
Okay, yeah. That's good. So, Casaundra.
Oh, who am I? Okay, well, I was born and raised here. My dad was military, Fort Riley, so he got here, joined the church, which is why I was born here. And pretty much when you join the church, you don't leave. And so that's when he got out of the military and decided to stay here. So I was born and raised here, went to Christian school for most of my life until they kicked me out when I was in the 10th grade. They thought they were punishing me by sending me to public school. But I loved it there, and I didn't want to leave. So anyway, I finished out the year there at the high school. That was the only year I went to Junction City High School. And then I went back to the church school and graduated from there. I got married at 19 years old, had 3 kids with my husband, stayed married for 11 years, got divorced. We've been co-parenting now for about 9 years because he remarried 1 year later after we got divorced. And so now, my kids have a stepmom. So it's just been kind of that. I work for the Army Benefit Center on post, and I also am a life insurance agent part-time. Okay. So, yep, that's what I do.
So totally you were in the church mostly all my
life. I was almost 30 years old when I left there. I had my first drink of alcohol when I was 30 years old. Like I never wore pants until I was like.
When you were saying that, it made me think about something. My girls, when we pulled them out of the church school, they used to sneak, pants to school or different shirts. I'm trying to remember when I had went up there, either my wife or myself went up there, and they came out in some pants like they saw a ghost because, we up there, forgot them. But, they used to do all of that, because we still had that belief. If you wear this, you were going to hell. You can't wear it. You got to look holy. You got to.
Ears weren't pierced or anything until, I was 20. Everything, I feel like I started living when I turned about 30 years old, and I'll be 40. So I just now started, living my life and making my own decisions. So I'll be 40 this year. But
that's okay because 40s was the new 30s.
Exactly. I'm living my life in reverse.
That's all right, and that's good. And I noticed the happiness. Since my daughters are your age, I keep mentioning them. I noticed the happiness in them. How much they just enjoy doing things, discovering new hobbies. Going on vacations and everything. And I'm just excited for them. I have a daughter, Kim, that's in Orlando, Florida, where I love to go visit her. She's young and she's having her first house built, down there.
That's awesome.
Her and her boyfriend, it's just excellent,
Experiences.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of here, and being sheltered, I just do want to say being sheltered was not all bad. Not having alcohol until I was that age was not a bad thing. Because some people think I'm way younger than I am, and I think sometimes people that do start drinking and smoking at a young age, they look way older than they are.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's your lifestyle, and we look good for our age, or so we're told anyway. but what I'm saying is there was so much naiveness that I had, just coming out here, I had to learn so many things the hard way. When I lived out in Kansas City, like my life was threatened. Like I used to think everything was sunshine and rainbows. I had to learn that, you know, you can't trust everybody. Okay. So a lot of stuff that I wasn't taught in church, I mean, not necessarily anybody's fault, because sometimes you just don't know. And then there's some things that they shelter you from that they shouldn't. Right. You know what I'm saying? This is the real world out here. We need to know, you know, about money and finances. We need to know about sex. Exactly. We need to know about, you know what I'm saying, a lot of stuff.
They need to learn it. I remember it was funny to us, well, to me, one of my friends, we used to joke about this all the time. We couldn't go to the movies, but we can rent movies. You know, I said, this is the craziest thing. You couldn't go in the theater, but we couldn't rent movies. We still joke about that today, you know, about, we felt like, I remember when the movie Amistad first came out, me and a friend of mine, we snuck to go see this movie, and the next Sunday, it seemed like that was the whole sermon about going to the movie. I'm like, wow.
No bowling, Tiffany. We couldn't go bowling. Nowhere. No.
We couldn't do anything. We couldn't have no perms. We had to wear. I know y'all seen us. We look like.
Our hair and dress code. That's a whole.
So that was what I'm leading up to. What was your experience, good and bad, in the church? Each one of you guys.
You can go first, T.
Oh, you was already hitting on some things, because you did say, you know, it preserved us from a lot of things. You know, but at the same time, it was a lie. Basically, we didn't know, like, even with testimonies, people did not, like in our church in particular, growing up, I didn't hear like, okay, God delivered me from, you didn't really hear anything like sexual sins, and I know some people did have those, you know, desires and those things that they did do, but you didn't hear that. The most you heard was like somebody may have got delivered out of alcohol.
Yes, but drugs.
They was very, it wasn't transparent. It's more like a facade. Like, you know, people act like they never sinned, or, you know, just like, you couldn't relate, like a young person couldn't really relate with an older person. You didn't really know how to overcome anything, because where we grew up, there was more of a focus on standards. It was like standards was the doctrine.
Yes.
So if standards is the doctrine, and you have this lust problem, or you have this lion demon and stuff like that, you don't know how to overcome that, because all you was taught was you have to look this way, and if you don't look this way, you're not saved. And other people, our church talked about every church in the city.
Yes, they were all the wrong church except for ours.
If you didn't look that way, the way we looked, you weren't saved.
Right.
And they did it so much that when you left, you was trapped. So you didn't go nowhere.
That's right.
Because you thought everything was bad.
You was already indoctrinated that everything else is wrong, and that your religion is right, but your religion is the same one that got rid of you. The same one that ridiculed you, the same one that wouldn't help you, the same one when you made a mistake, kicked you out, told people don't speak to you, and all these things. So the good I got from it, I would say, was when I was a little kid. I can't really say from when I became a teenager, because that's actually when I started going through my spiritual abuse, was actually after Christian school. I was talked about on a daily basis by one of the teachers. It was so bad, I had to go to the pastor. And when I went to the pastor, because his wife told us to go speak to him, we went. So that day was only 2 of us, even though like 20 people said they was going to go. And I never forget, I was talking to the pastor, and I couldn't even finish my story. I just started to cry. And so my friend, she had to finish the story for me, and I never forget, the pastor said, what? Like, what is going on in this Christian school? And so, make a long story short, what I'm trying to say is, from a young age, I had to like defend myself, because, you know, your parents, they are kind of afraid to get involved in a way, because they don't want to get talked about or shunned. So I found myself at 15 having to defend myself, having to go off on some of the elders in the church, and, you know, and it was just that way. But that's when my spiritual abuse had started, was when I was actually in the school when we were supposed to be learning, but instead you had teachers getting involved in young people's affairs, and they're supposed to be adults and they have no business getting involved with who likes who and who don't like
Oh
who.
my God.
And taking sides and, you know, calling me Jezebel and stuff. And you're supposed to be teaching math and you call, you know, you talk about me.
Right.
And I would go home crying and I wouldn't want to go to school. My mom would have to force me to go to school. I'm like, why? Why should I go to school to be talked about, hear myself being talked about? And I was like, you know what? I don't want this. Why should I be in a place that's supposed to heal people and it's hurting people? Like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
And so I knew by the time when I was turning 18 or whatever that was not going to be the choice. But to be honest with you all, my story started when I was in second grade. That's when I knew that something was wrong, when a teacher stepped me aside one day, and I used to make straight A's. I never got in trouble. And she pulled me aside one day and said, "Do you know you hurt Miss Pollock's feelings?" And I said, "How? How did I hurt her?" She said, when she said she was Catholic and you yelled out, "Oh, that's wrong." And I was like, you know, I was like, huh? But you know what? That stuck with me all those years. And I said, you know what? Something is wrong. She was like, you know what? If you love Jesus, you're not supposed to hurt people, are you, Tiffany? They're not supposed to. She's like, you made her cry. And I said, I did that. I made her cry. I couldn't believe I made this lady cry. And she was, you know, she taught me my first lesson. And that's when I knew that something was wrong. I didn't know what it was because I was a kid. But I just always knew that the environment that I'm in is not necessarily the healthiest environment, that something is wrong, that the nurturing is wrong, you know. It's teaching me to hate and to hurt people, you know. So I knew at a young age that, you know what, I'm going to find out what it is. And I was sad a lot of times because people, you know, they didn't know, and I didn't know how to articulate, like, Mommy, you know, this is, you know, I don't feel happy about this. And I carried that with me, but I believe that's why I had my experience at 15, because I already that's when God was like, okay, He's just going to show me from there the truth. And I was different. I was different than my siblings.
Yes, she is.
They didn't go through what I went through, though, you know. I went through that at that age. They didn't have that experience. They all had their own, or some of them are having their own experiences now, but He allowed me. I'm gonna go ahead and let Casaundra, because we can go on there.
No, it's fine. He said he gonna edit it.
Yeah, we got plenty of time. Right? This would be a couple of
because it's so much. It's just so.
Yeah.
I don't even. Oh my God! It's been so many years too, and
I can tell the part about the wedding. I can tell that part.
Yeah, tell that part.
Okay.
Because just like I said, there's so much complex to this.
Yeah, you know. Because like I said, I got married at 19, and I chose Tiffany and Crystal, were my two best friends at the time, to be in my wedding. And because they had recently left the church, the pastor said, no, they can't be in your wedding. They can't be your bridesmaids. And it actually caused a rift between me and Tiffany for, I don't even know how many years, because she felt like, well, have your wedding somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? Why you got to have it there if we want to? And I'm like, no, because for one, my parents were paying for the wedding. And for two, in my mind, I got to have the blessing of the pastor. And so I'm like, to me, that was like a friendship breakup, you know? And so it took years. And so I chose two other people at the last minute, you know, and one of them ended up being one of the reasons why I'm divorced now. But anyway, it was yeah, well, I mean, that was just one of the things. And so that was the last straw for me as far as attending, was when I got embarrassed in front of the entire congregation, and I got stood up in front of everyone, and I had to go to the altar and repent because I had not called her out, but I actually talked to her in the back of church. I was like, hey, you know what I'm saying, why are you messaging my husband? You guys' affair is supposed to be over. It was his birthday, and she texted him happy birthday. And I'm like, look, I hadn't said nothing to her the entire time. You know, and I'm not trying to, you know, paint bad pictures of people, because I'm not perfect either. Like, we both cheated on each other. You know what I'm saying? So when people get surprised when I say, why are you divorced? Why will you leave you? Did he cheat? I'm like, no, I did. And then he did. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like they'd be shocked that I'm that honest, but like, let's just be real. It's been that many years ago. We can be honest. And so anyway, I talked to her in the back, and the pastor, oh my gosh, you should have took that outside. That's so disrespectful. How dare you speak to her? This is a house of God. And so basically that next night, he stood me up in front of everybody, and I had to go down to the front, and she wasn't there that night. Apparently she got the heads up not to come. So I went down there and I cried my eyes out. I was humiliated. Okay, and when I got up from the altar, the only people were there was my sister. I'll never forget. I think one other person. And so I wanted to go talk to him and apologize, because I was genuinely apologetic and repentant. I'm like, you know what? I should have took that outside. You're right. It's never going to happen again.
Okay.
Do you know this man didn't even want to talk to me? He stopped me at the door. Wouldn't even let me in the office. He basically used me to embarrass me in front of everyone just to show his power or whatever, and didn't want to personally mentor me one-on-one, because I was in such a state of like humility at that point. And so I talked to my dad, and I'm like, did you see that? Like, that was wrong. You know, like, why didn't you say something? He was like, well, it wasn't my place. You know, he said, but he felt like it was wrong too. Like, you know, you shouldn't do that. And so I never went back after that. But now, you know, they won't let me back because I took my kids out of the school, and now I'm on the list. They have a list.
Okay. They have a list.
Yeah, you have to get permission to come back in the door. All the ushers have the list, and if your name is on it, you are not allowed to come in without speaking to the pastor. So I didn't find that out until my brother-in-law told me, because he's an usher, and I was going to come one Sunday, just random. I'm like, hey, save me a seat. I'm coming. And he was like, sis, like, you might not want to come. You're on the list. And so I'm like, what? So he told me what it was. And I'm like, oh, I want to know why I'm on this list. So I waited a whole week, something, I don't care. But then I did care. So I called and I asked him. And he said, because you took your kids out of the school, you didn't run it by me. So I'm thinking, I hadn't been a member for how long? I would have CP said my ex-husband. He's still a member running by. So I'm waiting for something else. Like, that can't be the reason. And so then he's like, oh, and also when you come, you're more of a distraction. If you're not coming to join, we'd rather you not come. I'm thinking, it's Mother's Day. Like, I want to come sit with my mom.
So you can't come for weddings, Mother's Day, or visit?
I couldn't even visit. And so at that point, I realized, okay, like, this is personal. You know, because you're not paying our tuition for our kids. This was a parenting decision. You know what I mean? So anyway, ever since then, it's been downhill.
Yeah.
As far as even visiting.
I didn't even know that part of the story you just shared. And the reason why I didn't know that is because even though I'm close with my family, they don't tell me everything that goes down that in the church, in that, that place, because it's like there's this loyalty to those people, and they don't want, once you have left and you expose them, or you tell it the truth like it is, they are not going to want you to feel like, oh yeah, here you got another brownie point, something else bad about the place, so a lot of times I didn't even know you had went through that, to be honest with you. The only thing I knew was the little piece you told me one day, but I didn't know to that extreme, that they even did that to you. Wow. The
pastor told me that out his mouth. Like, I called him and spoke to him on the phone. So then my parents were like, they couldn't believe it. They're like, maybe you should call back. Even my dad was like, no, I don't think no, something's wrong. You should call. I said, I'm not calling back. That's what he said.
I was talking about even with your marriage thing. Like,
yeah,
like, they were like, hush, hush. I don't know who was the person in charge at the time. I think I do, but yeah, they were real hush around that time, and that's the time when I was really vibrant. I had went to another church. I moved out of the state, and I was just exposed.
She was on a mission. I remember it.
and I don't think my name got mentioned. I wasn't even in town. I heard my name, but I didn't care because I was like.
And it's something when people come tell you.
She was so free. Tiffany was so free.
It's something when people come tell me. Your name was said over the pulpit, or your family's name. I think I was like, man, I'm famous,
right?
I must be doing something right.
I must be doing something right. They got to talk about me over the pulpit.
Yeah, it gave me ammunition. I was like, what? For real?
Yeah.
But that's when and I lived. The thing about with me, why I'm just adamant about this too, is I prayed. Right. That's one thing I did learn how to do. I learned how to pray.
Yes, amen.
And I was like, God, expose this man for who he is. Expose him. I started to pray. I was like, God, you have to expose this person. And I never forget, one time I went to this church, and I was so fired up in the Lord. I really was. He was walking down the aisle, And I think he was coming for me. I was visiting. Mind you, I was not a member.
Okay.
I was visiting from out of state. But I used to pray so much. I was one of them that would rebuke the devil, because I was just living that life like that too.
Yes, you was.
Where, I could tell the devil to get out of here and don't have no fear. And he walked down the aisle because he started talking. He was talking about the members, like how Casaundra said. But remember, I don't live there, so I don't know. They done got that deep now. So he's talking about some family, somebody at a park where they was preaching to someone, because I guess he used to be jealous if people would get other people saved and stuff, and he had nothing to do with it. So he was coming down the aisle. He said, "I'm that one at the gym wearing pants talking about praise the Lord." I was like, "He sound like he's talking about me." And so he started coming. I'm paraphrasing. He started coming down the aisle, and I looked him in the eye. I said, "This man said mess with me. I'm gonna jump up. I'm gonna say, I rebuke you, Satan." I was so ready. I was ready to rumble in the name of Jesus and say, "I rebuke you." Let me tell you something. That man turned around, and it was like I seen these horns and a tail. I was like, "Yeah, he can't come here because he know this one, because that's a demon on him." And I said, "You can't mess with this one," because I was too prayed up to be playing with people. Because when you're prayed up and fired up, speaking the truth, you don't care about who gets offended or anything.
The boldness that comes over you.
Can't nobody come for you for anything. So I prayed. I was praying hard. I mean, I went to a friend's house one time. Let me tell y'all this testimony. I went to a friend. She was a member of the church, and she's someone I grew up with, and I was like, God wants you to do more. No, you're not doing what you're supposed to. And so you're supposed to be preaching to a lot of people. You're supposed to be evangelizing. You're probably supposed to be pastoring, because that's the anointing she has on her. And I was like, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, girl. Come on. So she's listening to me and stuff like that. So the next time I came back, I addressed the pastor as Mr. I never called him a pastor, because I couldn't.
I ain't like you, Tiffany.
Something else, Tiffany.
Mr. and Mrs. I was looking at her wedding pictures, and I noticed her husband came home, and he was like looking at me strange. I was starting to feel uncomfortable, so I left. So I came back some months later. She had a baby. I knocked on the door. I was like, I want to see your baby. She peeked out the door. She was like, "Who's sleeping?" I was like, she don't want to let me in her house. Maybe because I said something about, the pastor. And she wouldn't let me in. So I didn't want to speak to her at church. I said, well, if she can't speak to me out at her house, I'm not speaking to her at church. I was a little hurt by it, right? And I figured it out, it was probably because what I said and stuff like that. But I'm going to make a long story short. That girl right now, she left. And now she's preaching the word of God.
Yes.
So she's doing. So she got the utmost respect for me. She really does. But it hurt though. When I went over there and then she shut the door. Like I said, I had doors slammed in my face. I've had even someone from my own family. I've had arguments with siblings. I've had. It was my dad. Yeah. I know he don't mind me sharing this because, he's overcame, So I never forget one day he was taking me to the airport. Now, let me go back. When I first moved and I came back, I had on some pants. And he was like, "You can't be in the house with those. You can't do that." But then he kept saying, "There's something about you that's different, though." He was like, "I like your attitude, but you can't wear those pants in the house. But I like your attitude." He was saying this in one sentence. He was saying, "You can't wear those pants, but I like your attitude. You are a different person. You have changed." And he was just like, he was so confused. And then, of course, we would argue about the church and the pastor. I'll never forget, I got to the airport, and we was arguing like left and right. He was like, "You can't stay at the house no more if you're going to talk about my pastor." Man, that thing, it was like somebody punched me in the stomach. I mean, gosh. I was hurt. I really was hurt, because I was like, did my father just tell me, his child, that because I'm voicing what's right, that I can't stay at the house? Like, it's like disowning you,
Yes, it's very hurtful. And I was going to tell that story, too, about my first Christmas that I couldn't spend there.
Right, and I'm about finished, but let me tell you, though, by the time I got home to Virginia, my dad called because something came on him, and he apologized about it. He says, I'm sorry. I knew it was the Lord that came on him and said, you out of line now. But yeah, he apologized, and so I had to, give him his props. But when it came to my parents and the marriage and all that, that was devastating. And I think that's one reason why it's hard for me to join someone's church when I've seen a church like separate a family. It's like I'm protesting. It's like I have a solid protest going on. Like, I ain't going to nobody's church until my parents get back together or something. That's how I feel on the inside because it's just, my mom don't go, so I'm like, I ain't going. It's sad though. It's sad.
It's really sad
and,
that they feel like they're doing the right thing too at the time when they make those choices. No, it's good. I appreciate that because the way that your dad apologized so quickly, though, some people hold stuff for years, so that says a lot about him. He didn't let that drag out, But what I was gonna say was the first year that I left there and I wasn't allowed to go to my parents' house for Christmas. They said you can come over like before the guests arrive. However, I couldn't come for dinner. And for my whole life, that was it. Our family was Christmas. That's what we did. And so for me, that was like I think that's the lowest I've ever been in my life that I can remember was being told that. And so I'm like, are you kidding me? And so I was prepared to wear a skirt the whole night. Like I used to keep one in my trunk just for when I came to their house, because for a while they were like that too until my grandma got a hold of him and she was like, look, that's your daughter. So now they don't care what I look like when I come to their house. But so that my friend at the time I was talking to, he invited me to their family's Christmas. And so I'll never forget the kindness. And then once he had invited me, my dad, he's like, you know what? The pastor has opened it up to everybody. They're having something at the Riddle Hall or whatever. You can come now. I said, Oh, now that he said it's okay, now I can come? No, I have other plans now. Do you know how that made me feel when you told me no, I'm not coming? And so that was the beginning of the rejection constantly every year, because then I had moved out to Kansas City, but I was still cool with my in-laws, so I came back with a trunk full of gifts for the family. I was told I couldn't go in their house for Christmas. So my mother-in-law cried, like she was hurt too. She was like, oh my gosh, we can't believe this is happening, like, so because we were all still close, even though I was no longer married to their son. But it just created, then I got to thinking, I always, rationalize and explain away stuff, give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, what? If I had a new wife, I probably wouldn't want my ex-wife, the new wife probably don't want to see her husband's ex every year at Christmas. I get it. Even though we don't want to have 2 Christmases with the kids, we were both okay with, being in the same place. But for everybody else, I was like, I'm going to be respectful. We'll just have our own Christmas. What I'm saying? We're not together no more. We got to start acting like it. So, So then, we started doing separate Christmases, but then when it came to birthdays, I'm like, look, we just have one party. Y'all can come to the party, So then that became a problem. The pastor told him, I don't want y'all in the same room at the same time. So then our co-parenting guy, it was always up against the wall. So I actually put in our parenting agreement because I got sick of it. I was just like, okay, we're not going to compete. We're not going to see who has the best party. If you have it, I just won't have it that year. Vice versa. So it got to be like that. And I'm like, okay, what if we have it in a park? Is it because it's at my house? Like, we want to create these memories with our kids. This is what they're going to remember. We got a long way to go here. We're trying to be good parents. So the one thing that I did, I feel like that was my last straw to try to appease this man, because the one that's up here now doesn't even know me. So I feel like he was going by what everybody told him. Okay. So I said, let me introduce myself to this man and let him know, because maybe he's thinking I'm trying to destroy, this new marriage, and that's not my intention. Right. And so I wrote an email to him like, this is, me, Gerald and I, and at the end I wrote everything out, and I said, speaking for Gerald and I, we just want you to change this rule because we want to have good memories with our kids. And so he called an entire meeting, never acknowledged my email, never responded, but he had my family in there, my ex's family, even his wife's family in the meeting so much like my to talk about me and my email. And so then he didn't even talk about what I said, but he got to the end and looked at my ex and said, oh, so she's speaking for you now? And he was like, no, she's saying this is what we both want. And so my mom, bless her heart, she actually spoke out in the meeting. I was so proud of her. And she said, my daughter, she's just trying to be a good mom. Like, she just really wants to have a birthday party. Like, that's it. So ultimately, though, the decision was no. We could not do it. And it was because of what he said. And and so ever since then, it's been always something. And so, like, at this point, I'm like, when is it going to stop? We've got 2 more kids to go. Are we always going to have these separate issues?
Right.
You know, with monumental dates and events in their lives. Co-parenting, I am on advocacy for this right now.
Okay.
Because this is what I feel. I feel like the church hurt is one thing, but when you're trying to hinder somebody from parenting their kids in a way that's memorable, and you got all these men out here that don't want to be a part of their kid's life in any way, and you got somebody that's trying to be, he's a good dad. You know what I'm saying? Like, he does the best that he can. But has he ever been to any of my kids' basketball games? No. Because that's what they believe up there, that it's idolatry. But what's really idolatry is when you put a man before God. That's idolatry.
That's true.
You know, it's not the sport. You can make anything an idol. But these are memories of my kids are going to have. Their dad was never at any of their games.
That was one of the questions that I was going to ask, because that's the thing that my kids feel, that we put someone else between, you know, like it was between us and God. We have to always ask the bishop something. We have to always ask the pastor before she became pastor. She was bishop. She was pastor. We always had to ask, can my girls go to the prom? Can my girls go to a dance? Can my girls wear this? You know, that was us. We asked that. And if we didn't, the reason I said we had to, because if we didn't, we knew what was going to happen. It was going to be us over the pulpit or something.
It's like a public humiliation, kind of.
Just humiliated. You sit there, just talked about so bad, and then people at the church wouldn't even hardly look you in the eye or speak to you.
Wow.
I had a close friend. He left the church. He quit. He left. They said he had sinned. He had did all these other things. He left the church, and he asked me to ride up to Topeka with him to pick up some wood or something. He was picking up some different items to build something. He had just built a new house, and before I can get back. The pastor found out about it, that I had went there. I don't know who told him or whatever. Before I can get back, she was calling my house, you know, and my wife said, hey, pastor call, want you to call. Call him. How can you go with him? He didn't left, as bad as he did me, the way he did this. I was shocked. I mean, this was the friend who was in the church that we were really good friends. This is a friend. I mean, I looked up to him because he had been ministering and everything. He'd been overseas, he had a nice family, and it was just like, I was just for a week straight, you can just go, that you just get beat down. I mean, it was just terrible.
So loyalty was her issue.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's the problem I have though with the church. Like, why do pastors feel like, why can't they just be pastors? Why they gotta be like cliquish and tell it? Why people gotta be choosing? Like, if I'm a pastor, if I'm walking in authority, I don't need to tell little old you. I'm not saying that you are little old you, but if I'm so big and bad, why I need to go tell you? Oh, you need to be on my side.
Right.
Go talk to him. Like, what? That's not pastoring. That's not what they're supposed to be doing.
And it happens so often.
Be so close to the people like that you got people choosing sides. Like, what is this?
That's ego.
Well, we've seen that. We've seen that with the pastor have wrong. And I say seen that. And let me be honest with you. I was one of those people that was on the pastor's side too. You know, I was there before I started to come to the realization and seeing things. I would say when people left, they were going to hell. I would think when they left, the pastor said, when you speak or preach or do Bible study, when you never mention this, mention that. You should say something about this. I've been there.
Oh, they will tell you what to say?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Yes, And so it's like it's coming from you and not them. If somebody else needs to say something, well, you need to, I always say, well, you need to tell them about that. You need to say that. You need to say that over the pulpit. It was a time, like I said, my wife and I, we went to high school together. We've been knowing each other forever, our families and things. But my wife, I was always liked more than my wife, it seemed like, by the leader, Even though my wife did her hair and did things for him, it seemed like it was always something there that because my wife stood firm in what they knew my wife, when it came to having a connection with God, like Tiffany said, they knew she was praying. They knew she was prayed up. They knew who she was. And you couldn't just pull nothing over her eyes or anything like that. Not that I wasn't, but they knew how my wife was. And, I would even feel sometimes my own wife was wrong. And I was like, I'm not going to, it took me a while to realize I'm not going to ruin all these years of marriage for some people who don't care,
They're trying to control you.
And we've seen so much, I've been on the road, been to revivals, been to Germany with them to do revivals and everything. And you see so much, it just become heartbreaking. You say,
Let me
go ahead.
say this though. It's the people that give these people the power.
Yep.
That's right.
And we have to, I'm just saying we, because, my parents, they thought they were doing the best thing that they knew to do, and, everybody. But we have got to become stronger mentally and think and quit giving people the power to control us, because I blame it on the people. Because y'all, like I tell my parents, I know y'all saw stuff, but y'all just didn't say anything. You can't tell me that this stuff just happened overnight. Y'all saw little seeds here and there, but y'all ain't say nothing. I said that's how they get the power. Then it's gonna be your family next, and then it's gonna be somebody else's family next, and then it's gonna be the next person's family. Everybody going through, because we all in the same place. Like, so why don't you guys get strong?
But why is it always the go-to is cut people off? Why is that the go-to? Like, even when we were young and I couldn't talk to them, I used to sneak and call them when my parents left. They were my friends. I used to sneak and put on the phone. But it's like, they don't go here. You can't talk to them. Why is that the go-to?
That's the culture, and it's not even just there, but that's the culture in a lot of places. We got to remember the church in America's started, the revival, the Azusa Street, those started like in the 1900s, and then just the culture was passed down. And some things came from slavery, and they just kept using this in the church and this, and then now it comes down to us where we're like, hold up, like we're the changers of this, like we're the ones that's going to actually confront it, talk about it, and be like, hey, no, this can no longer go on. So you have like our parents who was in that generation where you don't say much, you know what I'm saying?
But
or you
independent thought is discouraged, I feel like.
You see something, but you don't say nothing.
Right.
They from that.
Go along to get along.
Just being abused and taking it, and we're like, nah, we're not going to do this no more, because we the ones that's repercussion. Let me, I forgot a story about doing what the pastor say when it comes to like you, Mr. Tim, you was talking about your daughters, how you was putting, the pastor before them with certain things, and they saw how y'all was putting the church. Well, my father shared with me not too long ago, because, little by little, I get more stories, like, because I'm older now, so I can ask questions boldly, like, hey, and I can just talk about stuff free. So I asked him one day, because I was just curious. I said, you ever asked something or had a job or something you want to do and couldn't do it because of the pastor? And to my surprise, he told me yes. He said he used to be a manager at Domino's, and back in those days, they was giving him the opportunity to open up a franchise and go somewhere else. And he told me that he went to the pastor, and, the pastor, of course, told him no, because there's no churches. And I was like, can you imagine if my father would have went and opened up his franchise, just how well off to do we would be? And I'm like, wait a minute. This has got to stop. This asking the pastor this and that. I mean, you messing up people's generational wealth now. Yeah. We're talking about people being out of poverty.
Yeah.
Like, that thing has went too far. It's too far. It's too far.
But I'm sure their retirement is set and they're ready to go. Yeah, that you are supporting them financially. So of course they don't want you to go. That's like telling your employee not to quit, because now you got to train somebody else.
Yeah, we were discouraged from taking jobs that were, if this job was going to cause you to miss church, don't take the job. I mean, I had, even with going to school, if you're going to college. That's
why my dad had issues, because when you a man and another man trying to control you like that, you feel like just a man and you go a little crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
So I started putting two together, because I was like, my dad didn't used to act like this when we was little kids. He was one of the happiest person. Why all of a sudden my dad started getting disgruntled? My dad was not a disgruntled man. I remember as a kid having a happy man, and I kept trying to ask God, what happened to my dad? And I started digging into it, and as I started asking questions, I'm like, I get it. He couldn't be a man. Mm-hmm. He could not be a man for his family.
Yeah.
And that's so true. I've been to those places to where, and you have to tell your kids, no. You're not going to do this. And not because just the pastor or the pastor's husband told you it wasn't right, because you didn't want you don't want to offend the ministry. You think you're doing something against the ministry, and all the people that's there in line to say you was wrong, bring you before. Many a times had people that they brought after church. We're going to have a meet with all the elders and you, or we're going to pile up in the car and go to your house. You haven't been coming to church, something wrong with you, or you said this, we coming to your house, and I was right there in the car with him, and let me say this, it wasn't always bad.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate your support by lending me your ear. Please go and subscribe, follow, and share my podcast. For questions and comments, I can be reached at bigdog0862@me.com. That's bigdog0862@me.com. Tune in weekly for something interesting and exciting. This is Antonio the Mayor, Tony the Mayor, signing off and saying thank you. And remember, you can reach me also on Facebook at Tony the Mayor. Tony the Mayor, DAMAYOR. And you can also reach me on Instagram, the Mayor0862. The Mayor, DAMAYOR 0862. So I'll be looking to hear from you next time. And remember, call me. Send me a message, because everyone has a story to tell of experience, strength, and hope. And I want to hear your story. Thank you again.